Hi, I'm here with Ewan Bell, a maths student from Lonsdale, and he's running to be your new education officer. Hi, Ewan, welcome.
Hi, well, thank you for having me.
Well, shall we get started? Would you like to take us through your manifesto?
Yeah, so my manifesto is really based around 3 key points. So having students at the heart of CTP, curriculum transformation process, reading weeks for all, and working on getting Wednesday afternoons free for students, societies and books during CTP. So reading weeks, I think they're pretty essential. They help students to go back over the notes, to learn about it more and to really absorb the knowledge. The Wednesday afternoon's free. Every education officer for the past decade, I think, has gone in and promised that this year is going to be the year that they get Wednesday afternoons free. That's not going to be the case this year. It's not happened for the past 9 years. It's not going to happen this year. But what I can try and focus on intensely is through CTP, when modules are being condensed, when there's fewer modules and timetabling should be a simpler procedure, that is when we can really pressure the uni to put all their focus into getting the Wednesday afternoons free, because they're helpful for societies, for books, for students just existing, and allow students some guaranteed scheduling time for whatever they want to do, whether that's organised, society stuff, working, anything like that.
Well, thank you very much. Let's continue on that Wednesday afternoons line for a second, there, because some strides have been made this year. A step that's come forward is that currently Bucks undergraduates can basically be first on the list to change their timetable if there's a slot available.
Yes.
Do you see any further developments going in that direction? And if so, what are you looking to do on that front?
Over the next year, I'll be honest, I don't think there's going to be much. There's not going to be much changes to the scheduling with a year to go with CTP. The changes that Housing made this year have been good. They've been really helpful, but the extent to which they're helpful is minimal. Let's be frank. I have friends who've been in Bucks and they've still missed lectures and workshops and tests for competing in it because that's what they love doing. So yeah, over the next year, I'd love to be promising everyone that they can have Wednesday afternoons off. It's not going to be happening. But through CTP, it's one of the best chances we've had in the past decade to really focus on that and push the uni to follow their own policy. The uni's policy says they're going to be doing this, and we just need to do a really real push and work with them and be productive and see what we can do. Obviously, there's going to be some cases that it's not going to work for, but pushing for it, I don't see any reason why the vast majority of students won't be able to get that. Okay.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about CTP.
Yes.
Your manifesto goes into it quite extensively.
Yes, it's pretty crucial, I think.
I think so, yeah. Well, there have been some concerns over transparency. Obviously, Harrison put out a statement the other month regarding that issue.
Yes.
What's your policy on that? What would you, as an education officer, if you get the role, do to ensure that students are aware of the process?
I think a lot of what can be done through the academic rep system. So with working with the academic reps of all departments, of all the schools, there's enough of them that we can get the message out to students. I think getting the message from the university as to what they're going to do is a bit more of a challenge. Being generous, we can say that over the past year they've been deciding it. I think some of the modules are getting reviewed over summer and getting officially agreed with all the uni frameworks. So over the next year, I can't see a reason, or I'm not aware of a reason why that transparency can't exist from the uni. And it's my job would be working with the uni to foster that working together, because the university says they want to be student first, the union is student first. We'll be working together. We both want the same aims, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to achieve that.
Thank you. Well, you've talked about in your manifesto your time as a faculty rep for the science and technology
Yes.
faculty, and specifically working with the academic rep system. So from the perspective of a LUSU officer, what would that working relationship be like under you?
So from my experience, I've had roles in societies, in various other. I'm a big scout, so I roles in there. The leadership style that I've found works best for me is a lot of one-on-ones and small group meetings. So it'll be how I envisage it going would be more discussions I would be having with faculty reps, and then faculty reps would be deciding how that works for them. We'd be using the faculty forums and fostering discussions in there and making sure that the academic rep, if there's something that needs to be discussed in the faculty forum and the gathering of the academic reps, it's something that should be set out beforehand, so the academic reps can kind of talk to their course mates, filter that through, and help promote a very informed discussion around it.
Thank you. Well, that seems like quite a lot of communication inside LUSU. So I think we move on to the more serious question. In the last few months, there's obviously been some reports coming out of the student union about a sort of toxic workplace. Things like harassment, bullying, etc. have all been claimed. That's led to Keris Evans, the previous student president, stepping down, and Neve, who had this year been elected as Education Officer before this campaign, has also refused to take the position. So how comfortable are you working in that environment with this coming out?
I first like to say it's horrific. The fact we've had to have the president resign because of they weren't able to do their job in a way they were comfortable. We've had the previous education officer resign. The fact that these women are not able or comfortable to work in the union is awful. It should not happen, and I'm struggling to put into words how disappointing and frustrating it is to have the body that I'm looking to work for have that in the news. That's not something I want. That's not something I tolerate, and that's something I'd be really building into my teams to not happen. I've planned multiple events. I've planned multiple events with scouting. I've worked with women in teams. I've worked for women. That it's not a difficult thing to do, to build an inclusive workplace, inclusive environment, as long as we put the focus into it. And I don't want to say anything about the specifics of why it's not happened, because I don't want to be drawn into that. But I'd be putting an immense focus on ensuring that inclusive atmosphere and welcoming atmosphere is something that I do in all my work, and I'd be working with the FTOs and all the staff to ensure that, because why would you not want that?
Well, thank you very much. Speaking of the FTOs, you've spoken in your manifesto about working alongside FTOs and LCOs going forward and trying to create better lines of communication between different aspects of academic representatives and faculty staff and so on. What sort of outcome are you looking for out of that?
So the outcome I'm looking for, it's a slightly backwards way of looking at the question. I want to work with the academic reps to build the representation and the communication that the students want, and I want to work with the newly refurbished forums, LCO forums, Liberation and Campaigns Officer forums, to work with the other groups around campus to help get the representation that they want and they need. So when I was on Union Assembly, I voted for the new changes to how these forums would work, and there's a lot of the positive looking forwards for it and hoping to really grow the forums to represent their members, and I'd want to be working closely with them because there's going to be cases where with whatever issues there are, people will be wherever people are more comfortable raising them, whether that's through the forums, through the academic reps, however that is. It's imperative that if they're academic related, I end up hearing about them and we can work on the issues regardless of where they get filtered in. They all need to filter through, and all the news about what's happening and what I'm doing and what progress is being made on issues needs to filter through. So yeah, it's making sure the communication runs both ways across like a very wide range of the student body.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that you brought up just then your time on the Union Assembly,
Yes.
in which in your manifesto you talk about putting students first, being a voice for that in the Assembly. Well, this, of course, brings to a rather difficult issue with regards to putting students first of the crises that universities across the country have been experiencing for the past few years, and has, of course, led to very large strike waves amongst teaching staff and other university critical staff. Going forward, we might expect to see more of these strikes happening. At least at present, what's your position on that? Where do you stand with regards to making sure students' voices are still heard?
So it's an important thing to say from the back. I will approach all things of this nature with, I'm representative of the Students' Union, not the Lecturers' Union, not the University Managers' Union, the Students' Union. And that will be the focus of how I'm looking at it through all of them. So I know there's previous questions about would you support the strikes? If not, why not? And I think the important thing is we can't make a blanket judgment on what's going to be happening in 6-12 months' time, because everything can change in that time. But the focus has to be on putting the students first, and that means if there are strikes, if there are UCU union negotiations, that decision-making process of what the union's policy is has to go through Union Assembly and has to be pushed through there, where Union Assemblies where all different student groups, so JCR presidents, societies, sports, academic reps, we all meet, discuss and form union policy. And I think it's crucial to have that be the heartbeat of both the union and any process we have with dealing with academics and strikes and that sort of thing.
Right. But you said, you're for the Students' Union, not the Lecturers' Union, but obviously we also have postgraduate students at the university who also operate in a teaching role for a lot of their time here. How would you go about including them in these discussions, especially when historically there has been quite a lot more focus on undergraduates in the union?
Yes, and I think that's quite a fundamental issue with how undergraduate and postgraduates really react, because there's a big difference between what a postgrad degree and postgrad time spent at the uni is to undergrad. I think with there being more undergrad students, the kind of media and the union will kind of get biased towards there just by sheer numbers. But when I've been speaking to the postgraduate friends of mine who are doing PhDs and masters and that sort of thing, they don't feel they feel stuck between the two worlds of the staff and student. And I don't think that's something they particularly should need to choose. I think they can both have, if they're talking about unionised lecturers, they can both have UCU representing them and the SU representing them. I don't see them as really conflicting. I think we can work with them, with the postgrads board, and talk to them and learn from what they want to see from it, and really be paying attention to it and letting that and all the other forums and student groups guide us in that.
Okay, well, thank you. That's all of my questions. So thank you very much for your time, Ewan, and good luck in the campaign.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm here with Ariana Dell, a politics and international relations student from Furness College. She's running to be your new education officer. So welcome to the studio.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So would you like to run us through your manifesto to start with?
Yes, so I have 4 key points that I want to really focus on if I do get elected as officer. The first one would be to ensure that accessible resources are available online. This includes recorded lectures. I'd also like to make sure that before students choose their modules, they have an opportunity to understand what their modules are, get to know the lecturers a little bit more, to make sure that they're making the right choice for their degree. And that would be in sort of open days / taster sessions. My third manifesto point is to ensure that the transition between the 3-term timetable to the 2-term timetable, which would come the year after I would potentially be the education officer is a smooth transition, so the year would just be focusing on making sure there's communications between students and the university. And my final point is to support Women's Plus students in male-dominated subjects. I'd also like to have conversations with the university and students about the use of AI in education, as I know that's something that previous SU officers have touched on. However, it would just be starting the conversation on that again.
I see. Well, let's start with one of those issues. So the CTP has been talked about a fair bit, and
Yes.
Harrison put out a statement the other month. When talking about attempting to aid that transition over the next year, what obviously there is still some details to come out, but what does that look like to you?
Well, there is quite a bit of information about CTP readily available on the university website. However, when talking to my peers, it's very clear that not many people have actually gone out of their way to look for this webpage on the university website, which means my main priority would be to make sure that those communications are stronger, emails being sent out, and also offering support to students who will be moving from 3 to 2 terms throughout their degree. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned working with other full-time officers inside of LUSU. Do you think that there's a lack of communication between them at the minute, or is that just a trend that you'd like to continue?
Definitely a trend that I'd like to continue. What I currently see in the full-time officers, they do work quite collaboratively, and I think there's a lot of interchangeable issues that can be worked on with multiple officers to really ensure that the best support and help is provided to students and the most can be done. And that's definitely something I'd want to continue if I get the role.
I see. Well, speaking of concerns that students have, one thing that always comes up is the Wednesday afternoon issue.
Yes.
So currently, Harrison's made a small step, but a step, in that currently Bucks undergraduates have basically first pick if there's an available space to move their lectures or seminars or anything of the like from Wednesday afternoons to another one, so they can compete with other universities. There were a lot of students obviously talked about wanting to expand this. Do you have any plans on that front at all?
I definitely want to carry on what Harrison has started with the free Wednesday afternoons, and this sort of goes in with the CTP point of the manifesto as well. I think naturally we should be seeing sort of more availability throughout the days, and hopefully that would mean that Wednesday afternoons will be kept open to students for sports or other societies as well. And that would be a part of the CTP point of the manifesto to ensure that that is still something that stays for students.
Okay, well, you've talked a lot about working with these other officers then, both regards to transparency and communications, and also within the SU itself. So what relevant experience do you think could be brought up? Do you think a lack of direct experience in the SU would be an issue, or do you think that you have something that you can bring to the table?
Well, I have been a student trustee for a year and a half. So I got elected in December 2024, and then December 2023, then re-elected December 2024 to do the 6-month term until the end of this academic year. And I think that inside look to how LUSU runs and knowing the ins and outs will really be very valuable if I do get this role. Just being able to see what inside the boardroom looks like and knowing how LUSU runs as well.
I see. Well, speaking of how LUSU runs, in recent months there have been reports of somewhat of toxic culture around LUSU. Reports of toxic workplace, harassment, bullying. Keris Evans, the previous student union president, stepped down, and also Neve, who previously won the election officer campaign, refused to take the position on the same grounds. So how comfortable are you working within that environment as it stands presently?
It was really upsetting to see Keris go. She was really welcoming and lovely as a president, and I think it does bring up a really important point of the culture that can be created in that environment. And also working closely with LUSU, I've got some sort of idea. Obviously, you don't know until you're potentially in that position. However, I'm very comfortable in the fact that I would be able to lean on the other officers for support. And it will be a challenge, especially with the statements out from Neve and Keris. However, it's something that I'm willing to give a try.
Well, that's very hopeful.
Yes.
Very good. Well, I don't have a good question on that, but on the topic of communication, you've talked about in your manifesto an open dialogue regarding AI in both education and in the workplace.
Yes.
So an open dialogue, where do you see that beginning? What's your sort of opening statement on that, I suppose?
Well, I would like to go to the university, an open letter, maybe even start a forum about it specifically, because I know there's a lot of talk how AI doesn't have a place in education, especially higher education. However, whether or not we like it, it does have a current place in workplaces and modern societies. It's not something that can be ignored. So I do think a clear, open dialogue about AI by starting up forums with the university, getting academic reps involved as well, having it a point on the agenda is a good way to start. Because although there is the lighting system, too many students are still sort of in the dark of what is acceptable and whether or not they should actually learn how to use it for their careers.
Okay. Thank you. I have one last question for you. So in recent years, universities have faced an unprecedented crisis. And as a result, there have been a lot of teaching strikes and also different student demonstrations and the like. Should this strike wave continue, do you intend to support the lecturers and the other staff? And if so, how are you going to interface with the student body on this and to make sure that everyone's voice is represented?
I think it's something that I keep going back to, just about communications. I think a lot of frustrations and confusions come about when we don't understand why someone else is doing something. People don't go on strike for no reason. If there are train strikes, you don't blame the train conductors, you blame the companies that are not paying them fairly. So I don't think strikes are unreasonable, and I don't think they should be, hit down. However, I do think there should be better communication with the students and the lecturers as to why they're happening, and it should be a joint effort, joint force into ensuring that both lecturers and students are getting what they deserve from the university.
Right. Well, we say both lecturers and students, but of course, as education officer, you would be responsible for postgraduate students as well,
Yes.
many of whom are, at the very least, involved in the teaching process.
Yes.
You've talked about communication, yes, but with regard to those students who are in an interesting position in which they're sort of between these sections here, what would your position be on interfacing with them during this time?
Yes. It is an issue with, especially LUSU, it's every year that there's sort of a lack of direct communication or involvement from postgraduate students in student politics. It's much more focused on undergraduates, and it's working with the PG board directly, making sure that they are also involved. And I think there's a real value in finding those individual students who are in the middle and actually properly engaging with them about their experiences, both working and studying at the same time, and how they feel, instead of making assumptions and then policies on those assumptions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been lovely to have you.
Thank you. It's been lovely to be here.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
I'm here with Liz, who's a Politics, International Relations and Management student from Cartmel. So Liz, do you want to run us through your manifesto quickly?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate it. So my manifesto is split into 3 parts. So there's about me and why I think I'd be suited to the role. And then I have my 3 big policies, and then I have additional priorities. So my 3 main policies are quality of education and the students being prioritised during the CTP, and then a full review of the academic rep system, as well as developing flexible timetable options so that students can have part-time jobs while they study. And then I've got an additional 5 policies, which are no contact hours on a Wednesday afternoon, including for taught postgraduate students, the traffic light AI system being dynamic and keeping up with AI developments, including how it can accommodate for those with ILSPs, specifically neurodivergent students, 3-day self-certification of extensions, diversifying assessment types, sort of to fit in with employment and sort of employment skills that are needed, as well as advocating for students regarding government policies.
So if we start by talking a little bit about the CTP, now it's at quite a critical phase at the moment, and the current education officer, Harrison, has spoken out about his frustration at the opacity of the process and that. So what specifically would you like to see done differently with the way the CTP is being implemented at the moment?
So I actually think Harrison's been doing a really good job so far on student involvement. There has been previous criticism on the university making students feel like they're not being prioritised and lack of communication. I think recently, as of end of March, they've been releasing more communications, which is a great start. And I think Harrison's done a really good job at getting the student body involved, especially including paid opportunities for students. I think that's really progressive, and I believe that's really important, especially critical going forward into the development of the programs, which is what they're going into currently and into the next academic year before they implement it. So I think it would be mostly maintaining the work that's already been done and pushing for advocating for student voices even further.
And if we talk on a similar subject about extending work that's been accomplished, this year we've seen a bit of a breakthrough with the freeing up of Wednesday afternoons, which has been something of a perennial goal of education officers, with Wednesday afternoons being freed up now for undergraduate books students, or rather they will have priority to transfer out of Wednesday afternoon classes where alternatives are available.
Yes.
And from the FTO team especially, Harrison, there's been a lot of emphasis on, it's a small victory, but it's taken so long that it really is a big one. So how are you feeling about that, and how confident are you about being able to build further on that if you were elected?
I think when you've got momentum building up for something already, it's easier to break through. So I would be relatively confident, especially considering I don't believe it's a huge number of taught postgraduate students who are involved in BUCS. So being able to prioritise those students and sort of moving to different groups and being able to actually attend BUCS without blocking them from academically being able to sort of be more involved and feeling like they're sacrificing part of their education in order to deal with their passions. So I think the momentum does make it easier from a position that we would have been in about a year ago.
So would your focus first and foremost be on freeing up Wednesday afternoons for book students who are post-grads as well, and then sort of after that wanting to focus on non-book students?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Now, if we talk as well about, you've said you'd like to implement an academic rep review. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
So academic reps often feel as if their voices are not heard, or I've often heard people describing the system as somewhat pointless. I believe there's a really good foundation there. So the way that the reps work, there's course reps, there's department reps, and then there's faculty reps. I think that's a really good way of representing as many students as possible. However, a lot of students feel as if they're not being listened to with their concerns, specifically maybe regarding certain lecturers and the way that they teach, because the university doesn't want to tell them how to do their job essentially, when actually it does impact students. So I think there are ways of increasing accountability and also communication. So I believe that there is a rep newsletter that goes around, and I think that should also be accessible for students, and students should be knowing what's happening during the meetings. This would increase communication and accountability to hopefully make the reps feel as if their voices are being heard on a wider level, as well as increasing the communication between the wider student body who they represent.
And with more emphasis on wanting to put sort of student voices first in education, you've spoken about wanting to offer 3-day extensions available on request.
Yeah.
So my understanding is this is a thing in certain departments or faculties at the moment, but
Yes.
it's not quite around the university. So could you speak a bit more about what the benefits of that would be?
Yes, so my vision for 3-day self-certification is that you can apply for it before the deadline is due, but you don't need any evidence for it. I believe that it would increase student well-being, being able to have that time to breathe, sort of when you've got assessments coming up. And I also think it's an additional skill that comes along with time management. So in the workplace, you can get extensions. I don't think it's unrealistic to not allow people to have extensions. So I think it would increase well-being, it would increase students' quality of work. Currently, there is a policy, at least in PPR, where if you've got more than 2 pieces of coursework, I think, due on the same day, then you can get an automatic extension. But I think sometimes when you've got multiple due in the same week, you need a bit more time on something, even though it doesn't meet those requirements. I believe that it would be really important for time management. It's important for well-being, and it's also a skill in the workplace that is continued beyond university.
Now, detractors might say that an automatic, no questions asked, 3-day extension it would just effectively push every deadline back by 3 days. I mean, I can certainly say there've been times where I've gone, well, if I can get an extension on this, it's okay. I'll start it a couple of days later. It won't be a problem. Do you think that there might be some pushback from people who think, well, if everyone can get a 3-day extension, then effectively no one gets an extension?
No, I think there are 2 ways to mitigate that. So first of all, if you're going to get a 3-day extension and then start it last minute anyway, I think you're just depriving yourself of the opportunity to learn and the opportunity to make yourself better quality work. I don't think a 3-day extension makes any difference on whether or not someone starts their work on time or not. But I think to mitigate those concerns, there could be the option of having 1 or 2 limited per term. So you then have to have the additional management skill of knowing when to use it and when you'll need that 3-day self-certification.
Mm-hmm. And if we talk about the use of artificial intelligence in work as well, there's the traffic light system which has been implemented this year.
Yes.
Could you explain a little bit more about what you'd like to see change with that specifically?
So I think the traffic light system is a really good start on embracing AI during education. However, I believe that the amber category isn't quite as clear as it should be, especially for students with ILSPs. So for example, it says that using Grammarly Premium should be disclosed under the amber category. However, under DSA, you can get Grammarly Premium. And I think that means that there is a lack of clarity, specifically for students with ILSPs who need this technology. So I think in general, for everyone, the clarity is needed, because I think people will shy away from using it, or they'll use it without disclosing it, specifically for that amber category. But regarding people with ILSPs, there isn't a lot of research on this at the moment, but AI can potentially be really revolutionary for people with disabilities, specifically neurodivergent people. Because it can put people on a level playing field, and that is currently being seen as implemented in the workplace. And I think the university needs to try and make sure that the system is dynamic enough for those students.
It can be a bit of a difficult one, though. There have been a lot of articles in various newspapers and magazines, especially in the States, about lecturers and professors expressing their frustration at the widespread use of generative AI like ChatGPT and its ability to generate a really good essay with basically no skills or knowledge or student input needed. Do you think that there does need to be some sort of hard limit on the types of artificial intelligence used, or what would be a good way to ensure that it can be used productively, especially by disabled students, in a way that maximises educational experience rather than replacing the need to know your course effectively?
Yeah, so I think that's the key word with that is dynamic. So you want it to suit the needs of everyone, depending on different contexts, different courses, different modules. So that would be a challenge to definitely implement, I think, especially as it is an emerging field, and also neurodiversity is still also an emerging field within itself. So that definitely would be something that's more challenging to sort of research, but I think it is important that we don't stop at the red, amber, green system, and we keep going and we increase the clarity and how it works.
Now, if we jump to a bit of a different topic entirely, you've written in your manifesto that you've got a lot of background and experience with the kickboxing society.
Yeah.
But, of course, with Education Officer, a lot of, virtually all of the job is interacting with academic departments, academic leaders in the university, working behind the scenes. What experience have you got, if you've not got a background as an academic rep, which you think would make you qualified for this role?
I believe I have practical experience which I can apply. So through kickboxing, we essentially were left with an exec that did not do an effective handover. We were left with very small numbers of members. This year we've had over 90 members. And I think my leadership has been critical in that. I've put a lot of work into the society, and I'm very personally proud of what I've been able to do. And it's not been easy, but it means that I am able to deal with difficult situations, and I have had practicalities of having to deal with these things. So sometimes you're in a situation where you can't make everyone happy, and that's just realistic. And you have to do what's best for as many people as possible, and you have to make tough decisions, and you have to weigh them up. And I think that sort of experience is something that I can definitely take forward into the role of Education Officer. Additionally, I have experience as a corporate internship, so I have that corporate and professional experience as well. I know how to network, and I think these skills aren't directly involved with Education Officer. They're not direct experience, but they are entirely transferable skills that I think would make me a really strong candidate.
When it comes to navigating the sort of academic bureaucracy of the university, though, because it's quite a big institution, we do tend to see education officers come from a background of being academic reps or even faculty reps. Do you think not having that experience might put you at a disadvantage?
I personally don't think it does. Because I know that I can come into somewhere where I have no experience and I can learn about it. I also think it's an advantage that I have a fresh pair of eyes coming into something with experience that I already have. And I think the application of both of them together, as well as just the way that I know that I am able to work, isn't particularly a disadvantage, especially compared to... sorry.
Yeah,
that's the end of that's the end of my answer.
That's okay. And if we talk about strikes and trade unions for a second, universities are facing a fairly unprecedented financial crisis in the UK. Lots of jobs are being cut either through voluntary redundancies, or we're seeing at some universities entire courses and programmes being shut, and there have been lots of threats of strikes over this, not to mention still unresolved disputes over pay with the UCU, which relates back to the strike several years ago now. There's a decent chance that in your term, if you were elected, there would be strikes. If that were to be the case, would you support the strikes, and how would you balance that with supporting students, if so?
So first of all, my main priority would be students. So advocating for whatever the students need and their best interests would be the number one priority of that. That being said, the unions do need to work together against the university. At the moment, I don't have the context needed. I don't know what they'll vote on. I don't know what their demands will be on. So I can't fully say, but this is the kind of thing where you need to try and figure out what's best. I think, unfortunately, we don't live in a utopia where my personal beliefs, which is that everyone should be able to keep their jobs and everyone should be in good working environments, is not always possible for everyone. So making tough decisions and supporting unions and supporting everyone, as many people as possible's best interest, I think would be my priority.
But in the event of, say, something like a strike over pay or to prevent job cuts, there, of course, it negatively impacts students' academic experience
it does,
if there are strikes, but also it negatively impacts students' academic experience if staff aren't paid well or if staff are sacked. So balancing that, not to mention the fact that at LUSU you would have to represent as well postgraduate students who are often employed as graduate teaching assistants. How do you balance those conflicting priorities?
Well, that's a bit of a wicked problem, isn't it? You've really just got to try and compromise and come up with what is the best situation for everyone, which might mean that you lose in some situations. Personally, I would advocate again for the students and the postgraduate students who are in both. Those conflicting interests do make it quite an interesting situation. But again, it's a wicked problem. It doesn't have an easy answer. You just have to try and navigate it and do the best that you can.
And now just quickly before we wrap up, in recent months there's been a bit of a focus on the culture within student leadership at the university and SU, with allegations of sort of toxic workplaces, harassment and bullying, which has led to Kevis Evans, who was the president of LUSU, resigning. And for similar reasons it led to Neve, who'd been elected to become the next education officer, deciding not to take the role. How comfortable are you with the culture of leadership in the SU at the moment?
I think this does concern me, yeah, definitely, especially seeing two people sort of having to take a stand and sort of removing themselves from that environment. But I think you can't let fear stop you from doing things sometimes, and you have to put yourself in situations if you want to do something. I think that I would be able to handle that environment, and if not, maybe even change it, at least in a small way of just a bit of kindness to other people might make them feel better in themselves in the environment. But yeah, it is something that does concern me, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Liz.
Yeah, thank you for having me.